Okay, so we have been doing a lot about prepping up for this assignment of the floor plan for the cottage in the past few weeks, and I have waited on getting sort of all these things out there because really the assignment 3 covers the past 3 weeks of information that we've been looking at. So I'm going to go through the process of creating the setup for our assignment 3, and that's going to cover a lot of what we did talk about. The first thing is we do want to use the external reference manager. You can select it by using the insert tab here and clicking on this little arrow, or you can type in XR and press enter. That brings up the XREF manager, and the first thing we need to do is attach the PDF for our floor plan. So we're going to go and create a PDF version of the assignment, which you've saved off your Angel, and bring it in, place it in, and then we're going to use the align command key to be able to get it to be at the right scale. I'm going to start off at scale of 50 because I know it's 1 to 50, and I'm going to place it right there. So one of the things that we did talk about is the align command. So the first thing is to draw a line. I'm going to draw the line to be the accurate size, which in this case we'll say is 10,520 millimeters. And I'm just going to draw it off in space and make sure that it's the right length that we're looking for, which is 10,520, and press enter. And it goes off the page because we have a small scale there. I'm next going to type in AL and press enter for aligned and select my PDF. So what now happens is it asks you to first specify where it is that you're starting from, which I'm selecting it to be that first point of the line, and then where I want to go to as my second point, and that'll be at the end of this line. I next press enter and say yes and enter, and that aligns everything and scales it at the same time. So it works well if your things are kind of off. We're next wanting to create our own layers so that we can have a CTB file that works for us. So the layers here in the layers properties manager, and we'll create a first layer and call it A hatch and give that a color of 9. And you would do similarly for other thicknesses and that sort of thing. If you wanted for a wall with a thick line, we were using a cyan or a blue to go with those thicknesses. And you would create as many layers as you need in order to be able to draw out all the line work that you're looking to create. So what I'm going to do is create a hatch using the polyline from the A hatch layer. So I'm using a polyline, and I'm just going to trace out kind of the area for which I want to hatch out. Maybe it's all the way to the end over here. And I'm just being very general right now. You'll be more specific as to how it is that you want it to be laid out. I'm just going to quickly put that over here. And just to close it off, I type in C and enter. And now I have an edge for which my hatch can go in. That's the quick properties that I can turn off by clicking on these icons here so it doesn't show up every time I select something. Now I have a boundary. I want to hatch that boundary. So I'm going to use the select boundaries option, and I'm going to use this as my hatch pattern with this at scale of 500 and an angle of 45. And then I can just select. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually create a hatch using a couple of objects that I've placed into the actual drawing, and as I've drawn out that polyline for the boundary, it creates the hatch for me. But what I would like to do is actually create also a space for this so that it doesn't hatch this area right here. So I'm going to use the rectangle command, and I'm just going to draw out another boundary that goes around that table. As I hatch the boundary of this one and then select that additional boundary, it takes out the hatch work out of that space as well. and then I can finish that off and have that entered. The next step is we wanted to create our own layout with our own CTB file, and we had done that in class a few times, but what I'll do is I'll go through that step again. So I'm in Layout 1, I'm going to right click and select Page Setup Manager, modify this layout, and select it to be DWG to PDF, as well as this needs to be in millimeters since we're drawing in millimeters, and 1 to 1. So 1 to 1 and millimeters, DWG to PDF, and it's a letter size. The other thing is that we have to create our own CTB file, so I don't have one here right yet. I'm going to start off with the monochrome, and then edit this out, and say save as my own, which I'll call it Andre. I save that, and I can now go through the different colors, and if I wanted to change the line types for that color, or what we wanted to do is specify that each color has its own line weight. So color 2 would be 0.15, color 3 would be at 0.18, 0.2 maybe, color 4, 4.35, and the thickest one is at 0.7, I believe. It's around there somewhere. Additionally, we wanted to have color 9 be a color that was gray. So we'll select a new color for that. Instead of having it black, we can have it index color 8 or 9 and hit OK. So that's assigning that color to have its own color when we're printing and its own line weight when we print that as well. As long as we've got this changed, we can save it and close it, and now we need to make sure that the page setup goes to that as a setup. So that's good. We hit OK and close that. Because I change it from inches to millimeters, it rescales the size of the page. So I do have to click on the viewport edge and drag that out a little bit there. Okay, the next thing is when you want to activate a viewport, you double click on the inside of it, and I can use the double clicking of my mouse wheel to do a zoom extents. And then I want to make sure that it's at the proper scale, and we're using 1 to 50 for this example. So I'll click outside of the viewport to deactivate it, and then just resize it so that I have it at its proper widths and heights. Once that's set up, that's good. We also want to create a layer that's going to be specifically for the viewport layer. So we're going to call that a viewport, and we're going to make it so that it's a non-printing layer. And to do that, we just need to click on that little icon for the printer, change it off, and then we can select this and switch it over to the viewport layer. So that won't show up when I preview it. The last step that we did work through, we're talking about how to set up our annotation and creating title blocks for that. So the first thing is to create a text style, and that's using that little arrow to create the text style. We're going to start off with the annotative text style and create a new one from that. Call it text, and that's okay. And the next thing is we need to assign a specific height, and we've been using 3 millimeters. We can leave that as Arial and regular. I'll create an additional one to say for the title text, and that's okay. But this time we'll use it as bold instead of Arial, and this is going to be at 7 millimeters height. So that's good. We'll close that off. We are now going to go to the dimension style, do the same thing. We want to create a new one, base it off of the annotative one, and call it dimensions. And we'll continue there. Have everything by layer. Okay, the symbols, we want it to be architectural ticks, and this can be a 3 millimeter sized arrow height. Our text will be the text style that we created, but we want to have that by layer as well. Have it all set up that way. It's good. That's good. And then we want this to be at 0 and have this to be millimeters. Okay. So that's good. We have dimensions that you can go through and on the model space. We go to the model space and create a dimension using this leader here. And because we didn't set up our annotation scale yet, it now reminds you that you need to have the annotation scale set up, and we know it's going to be at 1 to 50, so we'll start off with that, and then you can draw out a dimension, place it in there. And it comes up as gray because I have my current layer is at the hatch layer. So it would be best to create a new layer for that dimension and call it the dimension layer. We'll give that a thin color, which is the red. Change this over by selecting the dimension and then switching it over to the new dimension layer that we created. We'll go back to the layout now, and we're going to create a rectangle. It's going to be the size about of our page. This rectangle should actually be on a new layer, and we're going to call that the title block layer. We'll give it a unique color, and we're going to assign this to go over to that layer. Oops, I didn't give it a unique color. Guess it didn't work out. Yes. Let's try switching it over to cyan. There it goes. Now it's on cyan, and that works. We want to now create some attributes. So we're going to go to the Insert tab, select Define Attributes, and we're going to fill out some of the information that's going to be showing up on our title block. And I will use my normal text size for there, making sure that the justification matches with where it is that I'm placing it. Okay, so I went ahead and created these new assignment attributes for the title block. Actually, I want to change these to a different layer, so I'll switch them over to the title block layer as well. And each one of them is at a different justification. This is at left justification. I can know by that blue square that shows up there. This is centered, and these two here are right justification. So they're lined up properly. Next, we now have all our objects that we can create a block out of them. So we're going to create block, and I'm going to call that title block. Pick a point which will be in the bottom left for our insertion. Select all these objects. We're not selecting the viewport, just the objects that we've created for the page. Press enter, and the rest can be left as it is. We'll hit OK, and then it pops open that attribute, and we can fill in the new information, which is to say that this should be floor plan, and that should say assignment 3, and this can be scale 1 to 50, and it's my full name that will be in there. Maybe we'll do by as well. So that's good. It hits OK, and there's the information. If I needed to change it, I could double click on it, and the enhanced attribute editor comes up, and we can change some of the text options or properties of that information. So that takes care of taking the title block into place. We have also our information at a proper scale that we do usually want to lock it, so that once we've got it, it's not moving around by accident. And we have the page set up and the CTB file. So hopefully that helps out, and you can enjoy the rest of the tracing and the information that's going to be going in. And we'll talk about other things